I'm Jack Bradley in for Steve Lance. The Justice Department today firing more than a dozen officials involved in the criminal prosecution of President Trump. The DOJ says that the move is in line with the mission of ending what they call the weaponization of government. It remains unclear who and how many people were terminated, but they all played a role in former special counsel Jack Smith's efforts to prosecute the president. The cases include Trump's handling of classified documents and his alleged involvement in the January 6th Capitol breach. Smith eventually dropped the cases, citing the DOJ's measure that prevents a sitting president from being prosecuted. The department says that acting attorney James McHenry does not trust these officials to, quote, assist in faithfully implementing the president's agenda. House Republicans traveled to Florida for a 3-day retreat to define their legislative strategy. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, joins us for more on this story. Luis, what can we expect from the annual retreat, and how is it different from other years?
Well, Jack, one of the things that is different from last year's annual retreat is that this year President Donald Trump is in the White House. So just as last year, House Republicans have a slim majority, 218 seats, but now they also Republicans control the Senate and the White House. So that's what is different, and what we can expect is 3 days of behind doors sessions of these 218 congressmen, ironing out the details of how they're going to approach the legislative agenda for 2025, in particular when it comes to reconciliation. Let's listen to what Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart said about the conference and how the House Republican Conference is feeling about it this year.
I think it's a new day. And I think every foreign leader needs to understand that the days of weakness and confusion are over in the United States. There's a real leader who has the fortitude and the courage to do what is right for the United States and also for our allies. And so I would express caution for any leader out there who believes that they can continue to abuse the relationship with the United States or try to negotiate concessions by trying to blackmail the United States. Those days are over.
So, Jack, earlier today we heard from President Donald Trump, who spoke to the House Republican Conference. On Tuesday, we expect to hear from J.D. Vance, who will meet with House Republicans, and also pollster Kellyanne Conway is going to have a closed-door meetings with House Republicans to go over the recent polls and new messaging strategies for 2025.
Well, there's a packed day there, and certainly a packed day ahead. What was Trump's main message to House Republicans?
Well, Jack, Trump first during his speech began by giving a victory lap with his House Republican colleagues, obviously going over the victory November 5th and how he has a mandate, not only winning the popular vote, winning the Senate and the White House. Another thing that the President Donald Trump emphasized is that he has every intention of fulfilling his campaign promise of no tax on tips, of no tax on overtime pay, and no tax on Social Security. And for that, he was asking House Republicans that, whichever way they find, but to find a way to reach an agreement for a reconciliation bill that can bring Trump's campaign promises to fruition.
And now, Luis, what are the main objectives here that House Republicans need to accomplish going forward?
Well, of course, Jack, as I just mentioned, there's 218 Republicans, soon to be 217 in the case of Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, if she's confirmed to be the next UN ambassador. So extremely slim majority in the House. And House Republicans have these 3 days to hash out their budget reconciliation proposal. So they're wanting to secure the southern border. They're wanting to extend the Trump tax cuts from the first presidency and also reduce government spending, things that don't go hand in hand. And they will have to find a way to reduce government spending and achieve all these other objectives that will require some fiscal expenditure. In particular, the House Freedom Caucus has already presented their proposal, and they are suggesting cutting down $500 billion in government spending. So we'll see where those $500 billion are going to be cut from. And that's the main objective that House Republicans have these 3 days, so that next week, the first week of February, they can present the budget resolution to the different committees and start drafting this reconciliation bill.
Seems like a very big undertaking. Luis Eduardo Martinez, our Washington correspondent there in Miami, Florida. Hope you're enjoying the weather there. Take care. Thank you very much. Now, the Senate has voted to confirm Scott Bessent to be Secretary of the Treasury. The final vote was 68 to 29, and this makes him the 5th Trump cabinet member to be confirmed. And President Trump announcing new executive orders today to reshape the U.S. military. He's also seeking to create a U.S. version of Israel's Iron Dome. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
As President Trump is meeting with GOP lawmakers in Florida, the White House tells NTD that he's also expected to sign at least 4 executive orders. One will create a next-generation missile defense shield for the U.S. modeled on Israel's Iron Dome. The goal is to defend the U.S. against missile attacks.
To immediately begin the construction of a state-of-the-art Iron Dome missile defense shield, which will be able to protect Americans, and everything will be made right here in the USA, 100%.
According to a fact sheet we got from the White House, the new missile system shield will protect the U.S. against ballistic, hypersonic, and advanced cruise missiles. The fact sheet also calls such potential attacks catastrophic threats. The order will also speed up the development of systems like sensors and interceptors to detect and shoot down launches against the U.S. And this is another promise made by President Trump on the campaign trail when he vowed to create an impenetrable dome to protect our people in the model of Israel's. One question, though, is we don't know exactly yet how much it will cost. Meanwhile, on the military, Trump is also expected to sign an order to ban thousands of transgender service members from serving in the military. Specifically, back in 2017, then President Trump also stated such a ban, but then later in 2021, President Biden repealed it, and now Trump is going even a step further by also mandating that the military cannot use quote-unquote invented pronouns. It's also prohibiting males from using female-designated facilities like for showering, sleeping, and changing. And also, Trump is expected to sign another order banning DEI programs in the military, which has been a focus for President Trump since his day one in office. And a third order that President Trump is expected to sign will reinstate any service members who was booted from the military for refusing to take the COVID-19 vaccine. According to the executive order's fact sheet, we know that they will also be paid with full back pay as well as get their full ranking back. And during his campaign, Trump has also stated that there should never have been a COVID vaccine mandate, adding that he would rehire anyone who was fired for it. Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
No more DEI at the DOD, Department of Defense. That's according to new Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. On his first day on the job, he says that the Pentagon will comply with President Trump's orders. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more.
Newly confirmed Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth says that the agency will remove its diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, policies in accordance with President Donald Trump's mandate.
Today, there are more executive orders coming that we fully support on removing DEI inside the Pentagon, reinstating troops who were pushed out because of COVID mandates, Iron Dome for America. This is happening quickly.
On Sunday, Hegseth posted on X, the president's guidance is clear: no more DEI at the Department of Defense. The Pentagon will comply immediately, no exceptions, name changes, or delays.
The lawful orders of the President of the United States will be executed inside this Defense Department swiftly and without excuse.
Just hours after being inaugurated, President Trump signed an executive order called Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing, effectively ending DEI policies in the federal government. It applies to all federal employees, contractors, and grantees according to the order. On Monday, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs announced that they have finished their initial implementation of this order. They say that almost 60 of their DEI department staff has been put on paid leave. In a statement, the department says the combined annual salary of these employees totals more than $8 million, an average of more than $136,000 a year per employee. One such employee is making more than $220,000 per year. The VA Director of Media Affairs says, "We are proud to have abandoned the divisive DEI policies of the past and pivot back to VA's core mission. We look forward to reallocating the millions of dollars the department was spending on DEI programs and personnel to better serve the men and women who have bravely served our nation. Pete Hegseth, a decorated Army veteran and former Fox News host, was confirmed to be the Secretary of Defense by the Senate on Friday. Initially, there was a 50-50 stalemate vote, with 3 Republican senators joining Senate Democrats voting against Hegseth. That is until Vice President J.D. Vance cast a tie-breaking vote, making it 51-50. Hegseth was sworn in by Vance on Saturday. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Next, the Trump administration's bold moves in Latin America, from pressuring Colombia to accept deportation flights to renewing focus on the Panama Canal. Joining us to break it all down is Thomas Barnett, author and principal business strategist at Throughline. Thomas Barnett, author of America's New Map, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, the White House says that Colombia will now accept all illegal immigrants being deported by the U.S. after Trump threatened to impose 25% tariffs across the board on the country. It changed the Colombian president's mind when he initially refused to allow the military planes carrying illegal migrants from Colombia to land. Now, Thomas, what message is this sending to other countries?
Well, it's sending the message that Trump is going to use every single ounce of power he has as president of the United States to economically pressure other countries to do what he wants. He's going to be very open and aggressive about that. I mean, the Colombian president was asking basically for a little more respect in terms of how these people were processed, not in handcuffs, say, not in chains. And even there, Trump was willing to go right to the mattresses and say, I'll jack up your prices 25% or worse throughout if you're unwilling to go along with what I want here.
And we're seeing him proposing tariffs on Canada as well as Mexico at 25% and China too at high rates. How effective do you see the use of tariff threats like we saw in Colombia as well from the Trump administration on combating illegal immigration in particular? Also, he's trying to combat fentanyl from both ends of the borders.
Right. I think on all these things, it's a number plucked out of the air, 25%. Sounds bad. It is bad. It would be passed on to American consumers, but it would definitely deflate the export earnings of countries involved. So I think you're going to see him use this as his go-to trick all across the board. For example, think of Jordan, which is highly dependent on U.S. trade. Trump wants Jordan to take in Palestinians. I could see him making a similar threat there, either sotto voce or openly through the media. So I think we're going to see this kind of maneuver time and again. It is weaponizing the most important aspect of the U.S. economy, which is we are a huge demand center in the global economy and a huge export market for a lot of different countries. So if you want them to feel pain as quickly as possible, shut down their ability to earn that export.
Now, Thomas, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is heading to Central America this week. This comes as Trump is working to regain control of the Panama Canal, which he says is seeing an increase of the Chinese Communist Party's presence. What would be the global impacts of the U.S. taking back control of the canal?
Well, I'm not sure I'm willing to go all the way to that scenario right off the bat. It was stunning for Trump to mention Panama 6 times in his inauguration address. I mean, that was fairly unprecedented. And the fact that Rubio is the first Latino ever to hold Secretary of State position, also very meaningful. The fact that he's very focused on immigration coming from that part of the world, also very meaningful. Do I throw in grabbing the Panama Canal with that cluster of issues right off the bat? No, I do not. I think that's really a negotiating tactic. If you want to get Panama's attention as quickly as possible, well, a quarter of their national income comes from operating the Panama Canal. And there's no quicker way, if you're the biggest customer, which we are, there's no bigger way than to grab their attention than to do it along those lines, making such a historic threat. But I think we're many steps from anything along those lines. I think it's really a bargaining stance on his part, but one that indicates that Central America is going to be very important to this administration.
So what would be the end goal of having a negotiating tactic as the Panama Canal?
Well, you understand that where Panama, northern Panama, connects to South America, that's the Darien Gap. That's the jungle zone through which about 500,000 migrants came annual last couple of years. So a big flow, a multi-billion-dollar industry. I can imagine the Trump administration wants to clamp down on that seriously, because ultimately the people who are coming to America more and more are not from Mexico, but from further south. Then Central America, affected pretty heavily by drought conditions last several years, and then South America, where we have this huge flow of Venezuelans coming out of that troubled country.
Now, we've heard a lot of talk about this, and even from Marco Rubio during his Senate confirmation hearing of the fact that the CCP could potentially, use the Panama Canal to its leverage. Since we're hearing all of this, is this sending a message to foreign leaders to choose the side of the U.S. over the CCP, particularly in the region of Latin America?
I think it is an attempt to make such signaling. China has come on influence-wise throughout Latin America in a very, very big way last 10 to 15 to 20 years. It is now the biggest trade partner for South America. It has Belt and Road Initiative agreements with most of the countries there. In the case of Panama, we're still the biggest trade partner, but China's the biggest export market for Panama. So I'd say we're still number one in terms of our influence throughout the region, but China has come on very strongly as number two in the last several years, and that has finally caught the attention of an American administration, this administration, to a degree not seen before in any previous one. It was inevitable.
Thomas Barnett, author of America's New Map, thank you very much for your insight here today.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.